Hey, Harvard. After the Harvard-Yale game, I'm sure you're sick of football analogies. But I'm here to say that today we're gearing up for the game of our lives. We're facing fundamental attacks on our rights and freedoms, particularly through legislation. That's why we need to be ready to fight back and fight for legislation that will protect those rights and freedoms. As your legislative director, that's exactly what I'll do. I grew up in a town of only 300 people. The type of rural community where Democrats like us have to fight for the smallest wins. It taught me a lot about resilience. See, I became involved starting in my freshman year of high school, making phone calls and knocking on doors in between farm fields like this. But I rose to the highest heights. I became the national vice chair of the High School Democrats of America, where I organized our first Capitol Hill Lobby Day in over 5 years, where our members took to the Hill and did advocacy for the issues we care most about. I want to do the same as your legislative director. This past summer, I wore this cheese head as Wisconsin's youngest delegate to the Democratic National Convention. That week taught me two things. One, the importance of hope. It's a bleak era for America. And yes, the fight ahead is tough. But if we lose hope, we let them win. Two, it's the importance of a vision. We need to articulate a clear vision to make change. That's why I've created a platform of 5 points to improve our advocacy here at Harvard College Downs. Firstly, we're going to create a legislative fellows program. What do I mean by this? I'm going to create a team for those most interested in engaging in advocacy to come together. They'll highlight legislation, conduct research on this legislation, and figure out what will be our top priorities at our legislative jamboree in the spring. Additionally, we're going to help them connect with nonprofits that do work at the local level so that they can understand change from the top to the bottom. Second, I want to increase our on-campus partnerships. There are so many organizations here at Harvard that are looking to make a difference and share both our values and our vision. For instance, the Harvard Votes Challenge is conducting advocacy on the Access Act right now. This Massachusetts state law would make it easier for students to vote through introducing measures like same-day voter registration. We want to make it easier for Harvard students to vote, whether it's here in Massachusetts or back home. That's why I'll increase our partnerships on legislation that focuses on voting rights. Third, I want to introduce an interstate connections program. Now, what do I mean by this? There are states all across the country where we have an opportunity to make change. I'll partner us with universities in states across the country where there are attacks on rights and freedoms. We'll host phone banks to legislators and days of action, and also highlight legislation of importance among our membership. I'll also introduce summer opportunities so that people back in their home states can continue to work on advocacy. Because our opportunity to make a difference doesn't end when we leave campus. It becomes stronger. Next, we need to think local. Yes, a lot of great change happens in the State House, but it also happens in city councils and mayoral offices. That's why I'll introduce a local day of action, where we partner with municipalities across the state. Like I said before, I want to increase our cooperation with local nonprofits and issue groups, and also run workshops so our members can know how they can make a difference when they go back home to their local communities. And lastly, I think that this past cycle has shown us that the Democratic Party needs to listen to youth voices. I was a delegate to the Wisconsin State Convention multiple times, where I helped introduce platform legislation and made the Democratic Party of Wisconsin more receptive to youth voices. I'd like to train our members on how they can become delegates to their own Democratic Party state conventions and how they can introduce platform resolutions. I also want to push the Democratic Party of Massachusetts to introduce a student advisory council. So students from universities like Harvard can provide feedback on policy positions and outreach to youth voters. Of course, I have many more ideas, but I believe these 5 address key issues that we as a party need to tackle as we rebuild our organizing infrastructure and push for legislative change.